So, you enjoyed your minimal responsibility for a live nativity?
It was great. And first of all, just the event was incredible. Just seeing all the people, and I had heard there'll be 1,000 people here, and I was like, "There's no way," and there absolutely was a way. I think Claude came up to me like 5 minutes into the first show on the first day and said, "We have 4 parking spaces left." I said, "Oh God, that's not enough." So
That is a great problem to have.
yeah, it was awesome. So no, it was great. It was great to just kind of see it, and yeah, I didn't really have. I was kind of bouncing around trying to help where I could, but it was nice to just kind of be there.
I mean, I think it's probably more important, specifically for your first one, to see what it is, to actually just be around and see what everybody's doing. That's probably important. But you got to do that, got to represent, and I was very, very happy with the way it came together.
It was awesome. Yeah, it was awesome.
Pretty great. So we talked about peace. And when I was writing those spoken word poems, that was the one I struggled with the most.
Yeah.
Just because I think we tend to think of it more as the absence of something rather than, so it's missing, conflict rather than a proactive thing. And I was very curious to see how you were going to approach it. I fully enjoyed that.
I was the same way. Like, I always assumed peace just was the opposite of war. And I sort of really saw it through the lens of violence. And because you always hear about war and peace. And I think it's also just because, like, I'm an active person, and I just don't do a lot of sitting around. Like, I've tried to take up meditating recently because I'm just trying to find different practices to help me find peace and kind of slow down in those spaces. But since a lot of that was never really a part of my daily rhythm, I don't do yoga or meditation or.
I was actually going to say yoga is something I started doing a few years ago, and I do it specifically in the mornings, and you could do just 10 minutes. And at a certain point, when you get in that rhythm of it, that 10 minutes starts to feel shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. And it gets easier and easier to just empty your headspace. And then I will say that far and away, like the mornings where I did yoga, because I didn't do it every morning, but the mornings where I did, I felt infinitely better, not only physically, but mentally. I felt more prepared. And yet most mornings I feel like 10 minutes, I don't have time to dedicate time, which is the dumbest thing I think I could ever say.
Well, and trying to find, like, when I think of peace now as a spiritual discipline, I think about like a quiet time and a prayer time. And I'm a big morning person, and I used to get up before we had like little kids, and even after we had kids for a while, I would get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock every day. And I just love the morning, and it was quiet. It was before anybody woke up. I could either, if I needed to like knock some work out or like, exercise or just sit, I was awake. I had energy. And recently that has shifted because I have one of my kids will sleep forever, but a couple of them will get up early. If they hear any noise, they're going to be up. And so, like this morning, I got up at 5:30, and I was there like 5 minutes after I got up. Here comes Simon. And so it's hard. So now I've shifted to where I stay up a lot later, because when the kids first go to bed, like once they go to sleep, they're usually in there and they don't come out. And so I can usually get more things done or kind of have some quiet time to myself. But last night I was just exhausted. So I went to sleep super early and was able to get up again. And I was just reminded this morning, like, how much I love that peace and quiet of the early morning. If the kids will stay asleep, it's just, not just the kids, but just, work is distracting, and, there's just so many distractions that I think it's hard to find peace. And that's one of the things that I appreciated about some of the things I've learned more recently about peace is just like trying to actively seek it out and not, if peace is just the absence of noise or chaos or business or whatever, it's really, really hard to really get away from it all. We always say this all the time, like, well, this week's crazy, but next week's going to be better, or I just got to get through this season and then it's going to calm down. Things never calm down.
They never
and
calm
so
down.
I think we spend a lot of our time waiting for a calm season or hoping that once everything dies down, we'll find that peace.
I mean,
and I just think that's rare.
We get those seasons where there isn't an active force impressing upon us things that need to be done as much as other seasons.
Right.
So for the church, that tends to be January and February-ish, and then summer months, and unless you're in youth ministry.
Sure.
And then other than that, like there's so many other seasons that we kind of bounce around between. But you're right in the sense that we tend to fill those times with, I can finally get this done.
Exactly.
This project I've been putting off. And so then those months where there's nothing going on, we immediately fill them. And then we're wondering, man, when is this time going to happen where I just don't have much going on?
The number of things that I've said, like here at work, like let's just get through the holidays and then we can look into that. There are so many things that are like tabled until January.
Well, that week after Christmas, before the new year, that is an actual nothing is going on.
Yeah.
Nothing is going on.
That's college football's going on. That's what's going
There's
on.
There's football. There is eating too much. There is cleaning constantly because you're eating too much, so you're constantly cleaning.
I know. Well, that's my problem is like, even in those times, I'm like, I can get house projects done. I can finally get to paint that room and I can get up and clean the gutters out and do all the things that I keep putting off.
Thing.
So,
no, just chill, man. Just chill.
I know.
I look forward to that. So one of the things that happened, I was at the 8:30 and I was taking some pre-notes to just try and prep for double listening at 11. But I swear the first thing I wrote was shalom, and I wrote it 30 seconds before you said it for the first time.
Nice.
And I was right. I wrote it down, and as I was setting my pen down, you're like, one word is shalom. I was like,
get out of my brain. Get out of my brain.
I'm going to reference Jonathan Perry again. He did this sermon around shalom once and made fun of himself because I think he said it was when he first visited Rome or something like that. And he was just like, I wanted to be the shalom guy. He was just walking down the street, like, shalom. Like totally making fun of himself. And, but it was just this, he fell in love with this word shalom. And I wanted, how did you define it in the sermon again?
It's like wholeness and it's not like complete. Hold on, I've got it. Oh no, my phone's over there. Yeah, it's like wholeness, togetherness, sort of that like one of the words I found in one of the books I was reading about it it was the image of like when broken pieces get put back together. And so it's this idea that it's not peace that's perfect, as in like everything was perfect all along. Like sometimes we try to create on Christmas, which I thought was really appropriate to the time. But it's this idea that when you take something broken and are able to put it back together, that healing, that restoration, that kind of catharsis
mosaic.
A mosaic image.
Or what's that that Japanese art where kintsugi or something like that, where you take those broken vases and then they use gold
they put it back together.
to put it together. I'll put it on the screen, whatever it's called. I'm sure I butchered it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I apologize if that was racist. Oh gosh.
No, I
made up some word that
but it's
sounded
like it's like
Japanese.
trying to make something beautiful out of something that's broken.
Yes.
And so that kind of like the peace that comes out of that.
I remember the first, I'd heard the word shalom plenty of times. But Jonathan Perry was the first pastor I ever worked with that was like, this word is awesome. It represents something so beautiful, and it's not pretentious. It's not anything other than this peaceful state of being, but connection and like all the things that it seems to represent. And it was apparently that when it was more closer to the time that it was created, it was very much a common thing that was sought after, kind of like this state of nirvana or something like that. And I love getting to hear about it in the context of this peace message. And so, I don't know, I just really was a big fan of that.
I love it. And I think trying to give people something active to do to seek out peace, because again, I think we just kind of hope we stumble upon it, or we think of it as when everything quiets down. There is no when everything quiets down.
So that leads me to the second thing I wrote. Why do we as a people not seek peace more? Why do you think we as a people?
Well, I think one answer for sure is that whether consciously or subconsciously, in much of our American culture, we equate busyness with success or achievement or value. Yeah. So
my self-worth is predicated on whether or not I am busy all the time.
Yeah. Sometimes it's how much am I getting done? Sometimes it's we want to seem busy either at work or at home, so it seems like we're doing a lot and we're, accomplishing a lot. Sometimes it's kind of status in the sense of like, look at everything I'm doing, or look at everything I'm invited to, or look how busy I am. And I think that's sort of like, stems from even when you're like a little kid in school, and it's like you get invited to all the cool stuff, and the nerd who's sitting at home alone, like that's I think that sort of idea really continues on into adulthood. And so I think that we're sort of hardwired in our society to be doing things all the time.
Sure.
And we also have baked into us like a real fear of missing out. And social media really compounds that, because it shows you all the things that you're not doing, all the things everyone else is doing. And so I think we feel like we're constantly missing out on things if we're not doing a million things. And so I think part of it is
that is true, but you get to choose what to do with the moments where you're by yourself. And you saying that you're currently attempting to intentionally find moments of peace and find ways to meditate and create that kind of shalom within yourself. I mean, and that's very much on purpose. I mean, I think that's wonderful.
Well, and I think too, the problem is I don't think we actively seek out peace or renewal. We seek out escapism. And so a lot of us will come home and we feel like we just need to decompress. So we're like, I just want to sit on the couch and eat ice cream and watch a nothing show. And I just need to like...
I mean, that sounds like everybody every day.
It is. Well, and because you kind of have to. You got like, I got to de-stress. I've got to like... I just need some time to just sit here and just kind of let the craziness of the day. I just want to sit on the couch and I just don't want to do anything. Well, we kind of translate that into then like a vacation or a holiday or a weekend, where if we are really burned out, a lot of times we'll say, I need a vacation. Now, sometimes our vacations are like active trips. You're not really resting on that vacation because you're going to like a destination that has a million things you want to go see. So you're running from sun up to sundown. That's exhausting. Like you come home more tired than when you left because you didn't go on a vacation. Like you went on a trip to go see something. And so I think part of it is that we also, I think, equate like the only way that I can find balance or peace is to get out of my life and escape it to a trip where I go and do nothing. Now, sometimes like that withdrawal and even doing nothing can be a form of meditation or finding peace. But because things are quiet and you're away from your home, like doesn't mean... I just think that we've equated like rest with renewal or peace or a lot of these things. And I think we're pretty good at finding ways to take a break or get away. We're not so great at finding peace in the midst of the storm, or practices that really connect us to something deeper spiritually.
It sounds like the thing that is the differentiation maker is intentionality.
Yeah. What are you doing?
Use that time where you don't necessarily have a million distractions and you don't have something to do.
Right.
and create something that generates a peaceful wholeness within yourself with that time.
Yeah.
Rather than just sit and veg out with ice cream and a nothing show.
I was talking to Em about this. She was giving a sermon on like rest and renewal and like how do you find, peace and renewal in the midst of all the craziness. And we equated it to like, so at the time her car was having, it had a coolant leak like a year ago, and we fixed it. Spent all this money to replace the head gasket and fixed it. And then the light came on again like 6 months later. And I was like, no. We already fixed this. And it was just low and it was fine. But she kind of used that as a metaphor in her sermon to talk about how a lot of times, like, we want to treat the symptoms without fixing the root cause. Mm-hmm. And so, like, if you have a coolant leak and your engine is low on coolant, it's going to overheat. And so you can drive it until it starts to overheat and then stop and then wait for it to cool off.
Or just put more coolant in, but it's still leaking. Or you can fix
the problem. Yeah, or you can try to put more coolant in. So I feel like we do that a lot of times. Like, we've got an unsustainable way of being, whatever that is. We're stressed out. We're overwhelmed. There's problems in our personal or professional life. And so then we think like, well, I'll go until I kind of hit the wall and then I'll go take a break, which is the like equivalent of turning the car off until it cools down.
Yeah.
But like, you're still going to overheat every time you get back in the car.
So the next thing I wrote down leads into this. Is chaos even avoidable during the Christmas season?
No. Chaos isn't avoidable. That was the whole point of like, you can't escape chaos. You can't control it. We spend so much of our life trying to control our environment and trying to control everything, and you can't do it.
Okay, so then that leads into the next question. Is there a way to embrace chaos in a healthy way?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes things do just get too chaotic and you don't want to live in that forever. One of the things that I think is helpful is to realize while you can't control chaos, you can control your schedule and you can control how many things you open yourself up to being chaotic. So I think we talked about this, but I worked in a church in like the growing part of like West Frisco, Denton County kind of Prosper area. And the churches in the area sort of took one of two approaches. Either it's a very busy community.
Yes.
High achieving school districts.
We have talked about this.
Growing, very exciting, where either you can match that and the church can do 1,000 events, or you can try to model what rest and balance looks like. And so we took the second path, and we had a church connected to us that took the former path. And we both reached people in different ways, but it was really cool to model rest and balance because we would constantly intentionally not plan things. So like we never would do an Easter egg hunt for the whole community. Like we'd do it for our own kids ministry. We didn't try to do it for the whole community. We didn't do a fall festival.
Grace Avenue does do everything.
They did everything, but we were trying to say like, we're not going to do every event because we were competing with all the neighborhoods, which made us adversarial with the neighborhoods. Yeah. Instead, we tried to support their events and went to them, which lessened the plans for us, but we were still present with our people. Right. And so it was a way of trying to model what does balance look like. And I would preach all the time, you are not a victim. Because the number of times people would come to me and say, oh, I would give more, but I just can't. No, you've just chosen to spend your money on other things. Oh, I would volunteer. I just don't have time. No, you have time. You've just chosen to spend your time on something else. And that sounds harsh.
You are not a victim.
Nobody, like everybody wants to act like I would do something if I could, but I can't. My hands are tied. I don't have any time left. That is not true. You've just chosen to prioritize things over that.
I've heard it said you have literally just as much time as everyone else.
Yeah. So I told a story in one of my sermons where I said, it's a real bummer when you realize like you have just as much time every day as Beyonce does, but look at what she accomplishes and what did you do this week? And so I think that was just a joke, but I think that it's real that people don't want to really admit. I've heard so many people say, I was going to come to church, but I had a work meeting. I get it. I've yet to hear somebody say, I was going to go to a work meeting today, but we have church. And one time there was a youth at a church that I worked at who was supposed to do something. They had like a band concert or they had a competition or they had something for school or scouts or some other organizational thing. And they didn't go to it because we had some event at church that they were like in leadership and participating in. So they had to make a choice. And 9.9 times out of 10, people will choose work, school, scouts, family, whatever. They'll choose literally literally anything, because a lot of those things don't feel optional. And in the church, we can't say this is mandatory. I mean, some churches do, but like, we're not going to say this is mandatory. And so I get the pull. Like, I feel that in my own family, where like a school will say, if your kid is going to do this, they have to come to rehearsal. They have to, or they don't get to do it. The struggle with that is, if you choose everything else over the church every single time, you're teaching your kids the church is the last priority in our life. And parents don't want to admit that. And I hate saying that, because it is very difficult and it is a hard challenge. And it's not every time. It's not that you have to say yes to the church over literally everything in your life. But when you do say, when you choose, waffles, vacation, I'm tired, it's raining. Like, when you get into those levels of like, we'll give to the church out of what we have left. We'll go to church when we don't have anything else going on. We'll volunteer if we don't have anything else scheduled. You're teaching your kids that this is the least important priority in your life. And everybody would say it's the top priority. But that's why scripture says, like, where your treasure is, your heart will be also. I didn't mean to get all preachy today, but like, this happens, I think, in people finding peace, is they'll say like, oh, I would do a quiet time, but I just don't have time. And it's like, no, you've chosen to do other things. Yes, so you have to prioritize peace. And I think in a season of chaos, you have to prioritize peace. Otherwise, you're never going to, like, if you're waiting around for a quiet time in December, rather, you're going to be waiting a long time. So I just think that I was very shaped early on by this idea that like, you have way more control over your life than you think you do. You're not a victim to the schedule you set up. And if you want peace, go and get it. Like, make time for it. If it matters, you'll make time. And we make time for everything that matters in our life. We forget about some of the things that really can have the biggest impact. And it breaks my heart when people will come in to talk because they're overwhelmed and burned out, and they're on the verge of like depression or burnout. And when you start asking questions like, well, what do you do for yourself? Nothing. I have no time for myself. Okay, well.
Society puts a lot of pressure on people to match a certain type of energy that is made up, essentially.
It's unachievable.
We made up this standard that doesn't actually exist, that is not a thing that a normal human being can access. Almost nobody has that much money. Almost nobody has that much time. Right. And almost nobody has that much energy. Yeah. And then all three of those things combined, and like, I don't know who that person is that just does live that type of life in a healthy way, that's not just entirely hedonistic, that didn't just inherit $20 billion and then just decided to live their life and make sure somebody was there to capture it on a camera phone.
Well, it's funny because we'll judge people who do. Like, it's rare, but if you run into somebody who really takes care of themselves well, you'll see them on a day and you'll say, how are things going? Assuming everyone's going to say, oh, it's just crazy. They'll say, oh, it's fantastic. You know, I got up this morning, went and got some coffee, spent some time, riding my bike. And just like, they have all this that they did for themselves. And it's like, wow, you're really like doing a lot for yourself. I mean, like, we start to get judgy that they're selfish and they should be working harder and they should be doing more. But
I think that we are modeling the correct way to do life.
But it stems out of envy. We're like, oh man, like, I wish I would have done that. That sounds great. I wish I would have made that time for all those things.
Honestly, like, if you do meet somebody like that, my first thing is to go, what mental shift did you make to say, you know what, this is how I'm going to live, and I'm going to intentionally, push myself so that I feel better at the end of each day. I'm tired, but I used that energy in a lot of it so that I would theoretically have more energy the following day because I'm building myself up, but without sacrificing too much of hedonistic, like eating really well, drinking really well, spending time with friends. Like, because if you're just at the gym all day, every day, and you only eat kale, no, thank you. I do not want that life.
Yeah, no way.
I wish I loved going to the gym. I really do. I have friends that are gym rats and they just that's their happy place. And I'm like, you're a lunatic. The gym is terrible.
It hurts.
I don't like it. I feel so gross afterward. But some people just love it. Like there are things I wish I loved to do. I wish I looked forward to going to the gym. I wish I looked forward to stuff that was healthy. Yeah. Instead, I look forward to eating
cookies and napping and watching TV.
I look forward to stuff like that.
I know, I hate it.
And I think that there is just that kind of shift. So that's my thing is let me learn from you in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's this really great scene in this show I love where they like change their entire philosophy about how they're going to be. And they said, you know how we did that? We just decided to. Mm-hmm. And I love the simplicity of that. And I think a lot of times we do feel victimized by our own choices. We feel trapped. And sometimes you actually are trapped. And so I'm not trying to minimize anyone's circumstance, but a lot of times we kind of do it to ourselves. And we feel like I don't have any time. And I remember kind of early in my career, when my job started to get really busy, I was talking to somebody in one of our like covenant groups about like, I don't have time to write sermons. I don't have time to just like see people. No, I don't mean like a hospital visit or like an intentional care, but just to like spend time with members and just spend time with staff or just write my sermon or these things that aren't urgent or emergencies. I don't have time for them. And they said, why don't you schedule them? I was like, that's ridiculous. I can't be like, don't bother me. This is my time to go get coffee with somebody. But I started to do it and I was like, oh, you can do it. You can make time for it. And I felt guilty as I would sit there and I would go, this is really my go-to coffee time with somebody? Like, am I okay with this? I feel like I'm not doing my job. Like, I almost felt guilty about taking care of myself or taking care of, the things at church that were really important, but weren't urgent. They didn't have to be done. Like, the bills were going to get paid if I didn't do it. Yeah. But I was missing out on some really important things. And I think that happens with continuing education. Like, I'm sure there's a whole host of things where you're like, man, I really need to tune those drums. Like, oh, I'll do it next week. And then next week turns into like 2 years later. You still haven't done that kind of stuff happens with all of us.
Absolutely. The thing the way you were saying it, like just deciding to do, we just decided to, what that makes me think of, and I've encountered this only a handful of times, but if you know somebody who smoked cigarettes for like 20 plus years, and then one day, without like a health scare, without something that forces their hand, one day they just go,
make a decision.
I'm not going to do it anymore. Mm-hmm. And the battle that their body fights, because every second of every day for at least the next several months, I would argue probably 6 months, 3 maybe, but everything is telling them you need a cigarette right now. But because they ask them how they stuck on that decision. Like, what did they do? What mental trick did they do to go, nah?
Yeah.
Because those are the people that are not only denying the repetition that they've had for the majority of their life or 20 years or plus or whatever, but their body is telling them like, you need nicotine right now. You need this thing. So there are a lot of forces acting upon them saying you have to have this. And they just go, That to me is possibly the best example of somebody just deciding and going,
I love it. Better. I love sweeping declarations. I love New Year's resolutions. I love all these things. And they get made fun of a lot, but I think that if you don't ever make a big decision, you're not going to have a big change in your life. And the number of people that I know personally that are like, oh, I just wish whatever, but they have no intention of actually doing it.
Yeah.
And I have the same thing in my own life. I'm like, oh God, I wish I could do this. I wish I would do that. And the only way that it's ever happened in my life is exactly what you said. You make a decision one day and you force yourself to make a change. Mm-hmm. And I think there are a million reasons not to do it. There's a million reasons not to do a lot of things. And I think at the end of the day, like you just need one to do it, one reason to do it. and make a decision. So I hope people make that decision to find peace, because this is a chaotic season.
I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me.
Yeah.
Thanks for hanging out with us. Go find some peace.
See you next week.
Peace.